Legal reasons? Yeah.
Putting on my end as well now.
Okay. So I'll give you guys 5 seconds.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay. We're going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. We welcome back to the Lost Signals reviews film and television. We decided to go back to a couple years ago, or a year ago, or however many time passed. Considering
Recently-ish.
COVID screwed up my view of things. We did foreign films, and we really enjoyed going over things. So we decided for as we return as a podcast to do a deep dive into foreign films again. It's gonna be slightly different than how we used to, which we used to go down the line of our system. Yeah, we're going to continue using the scoring system, but now it's going to be more discussion oriented.
Yeah.
Anyway, my name is Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Scott Thotho
Hola.
and Christopher Morgan.
Good evening.
All right, so today we are doing a 1993, 1994, or 1995, depending on how you measure things, Cuban film, Fresa y Chocolate, or Strawberry and Chocolate, which was directed by Tomas Gutierrez Aleo, who's a very prolific filmmaker in Cuba. This is towards the end of his career, but from what he has over 20 films, and this was based on a short story, and also the screenplay was written by the short story called Sinal Paz. But as a brief synopsis of the work, a young college student named David is preyed upon, but an older art critic, artist, attempts to seduce him. There's a suspect that he's not necessarily a big proponent of the Cuban government, so David gets asked to go and pretend to be his friend and keep tabs on him. They actually develop a genuine friendship, and the story revolves around their growing friendship, what it means to be to have romance and whatnot. Anyway, Scott, would you like to start off with giving your score? Of
Yes,
this?
sure. So I was unfamiliar with this film, and I believe this is Chris's suggestion when we decided to do some foreign stuff. So I ended up giving it, I think, an 8, and I took a point off for plot, gave 1 to everything else on our scale, and I struggled with whether or not I would recommend it. Ended up saying like just a soft, like not quite, like it was a good film, and I think we'll talk out why, like what the aspects we liked about it and what was done well within it. But it's not a film. Either I would be like rushing out to be like, you got to see this foreign film. Like, yes, it's good. It has some good stuff in it, which we'll get to. But overall, I think I'm gonna set it on 8.
Chris?
I'm actually going to settle on a 9. I was back and forth on a 10 or a 9 because I did see this 25 years ago and it's resonated with me. So
Fair enough.
I don't know, but I was like back and forth whether I was having issues with pacing at times. But then again, I love the style so much. I'm not really sure if it was a pacing issue, but regardless, I saw this 25 years ago when I was working at the library. I have recommended it several times since, so it is definitely getting a recommend from me.
Fair.
So unless they change it to 10, then I'm going to give 2 for plot and 1 for everything else.
Okay.
I also gave it an 8, like you, Scott. I have to view it as an American audience in modern day, and I do think it suffers from pacing issues. Now, granted, it was part of a tradition called Cine Libre, and I've also heard a number of different other terms for this style, but it was kind of a rejection of both mainstream Hollywood and European film styles. So perhaps it's the focus of it was on trying to be very grounded and realistic. It didn't always work for me. I think that there were like it's a near 2-hour movie, which I don't necessarily think it needed to be, and I also don't think the antagonists worked all that well for me. Granted, their individual fights and the LGBTQ issues work there, but they actually have a personification of a guy named Miguel, and he was completely underwritten.
Pretty flat. Sure.
So I'm giving it for that. but basically because I don't think it's an eye movie. But nonetheless, I would recommend this because I think it's an interesting look at a Cuban look at both the benefits and drawbacks of Cuban society, which, from what I understand, is Alejo's main purpose. And I also think it's a very interesting look at an early '90s LGBTQ storyline.
Yeah.
So, uh, now, is there anything you want to talk about for this film?
No, I think like so again, maybe it comes back to whether or not I recommend it. Like, yeah, it does a good job focusing on its issues, and sure, I guess we have to say it seems to have been touted as portraying life under. It's set in '79 Cuba, I believe.
Yes.
Right. So like life during that time, in that era, in that society, and everything. And yeah, so like I think I apologize, I'm gonna steal something from you. About a little less than halfway through, we realized like, oh, this is kind of a coming of age film. Like now, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Chris, you had said you had seen this film before, so you knew basically what was going to happen. I thought it might go to like whether or not he's going to like basically David that is like betrayed Diego like to the Communist Party, and like and that was be like a political intrigue sort of story like that. So what it ended up being was again perfectly fine, and more than that, really. Like I know that seems almost backhanded. I think it was a very well done, executed film. It's just that I don't know how to put my finger on like in the past you've admitted like this is like sort of the down to earth like slice of life story for you, and like that's just generally not my thing. But again, I will give a lot of credit to the acting for sure, and yeah, Chris, the style is pretty great. Like maybe we can go back to that later, but overall, yes, it is a well composed and well written film, and has something to say. Just not the most amazing one I've ever seen, but it's interesting, I think, for the fact that because it is set and comes out of that of Cuba and of that era, and and what was happening at the time. So I think that's the most to me like if you're gonna point to something about what stands out about this film, that's probably it for me. So what do you think, Chris?
I saw this at a time of political complacency. I guess I tried to be always moderate or centrist. I don't really know. But as one of the coworker who recommended it to me, said he was a communist, which probably means he was more of a socialist, Marxist, I guess. So he showed this to me, and I didn't know what to expect because at the time, unlike now, that's pretty apolitical. Having protested the shit out of the first Gulf War, and now watching it now, at the time we both thought it was a very fair movie in that, as you know, the purpose was it shows you the positives, negatives, it critiques, and considering both these men are patriots who love their country, it was just it was interesting the dividing point between the two. So looking at through the lens now, I do agree it's more of a it is definitely still a fair movie because even with me politically today, I try to be as objective, if not emotionally objective, try to find people to balance it out. So I don't go way off on one side or another at any given point. My whole point is, and you said this was one of the goals of this style of cinema was that it was very fair. I found myself the frustrations that both men had at various times. Um, and yeah, shit, I was gonna, I forgot about my next sentence. But yeah, viewing it through the lens of today, this is why I gave the antagonist more credit. This was going to go to Scott's and I's normal existential thing because even though the character of Miguel was underwritten, more so than even then, because I understand everything better, I found the system more of a threat and more insidious. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I found the team to represent something more insidious. So to me, that he was underwritten. Being a college student, I think if he was any more written, he probably would have given more gravitas to somebody that age, because he threw the temper tantrum and pieced out right about when he probably should have, realistically. But I found this a much more interesting film, much more engaging to me because of how I've changed, and even like cinematically. At the time I had pretty good eye for film. I was watching Bergman by then. But now that we've actually been really diving into a lot of foreign films, like, with the Iranian films, and we did an Argentinian film, and my appreciation has gone up for this style of filmmaking as well. So
I am a socialist, probably a Marxist in the sense of actually. So I'm actually very sensitive to the portrayal, and especially since America's antagonism towards Cuba. I've never been, so I can't make any personal observations on it. But I thought it was a very fair depiction, a realistic depiction of both the benefits and flaws of the system, which was his intent. Now, if we can go into the characters a little bit, David was, as you mentioned, kind of it was almost a straightforward coming of age character with all of those tropes about. I thought the most interesting character in this was Diego. And nothing breaks my heart more than a character suffering from unrequited love. And he certainly does. And I thought the actor did a phenomenal job portraying that. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. So, I lumped Diego. Like, I counted him as a secondary protagonist. So, like, yeah, I guess we could sit here and argue, like, or make a case one way or another. But to me, it was like obvious, like, that it's 60-40 split. And yeah, like, I think it was a very humanistic portrayal. I think we can agree, and had a lot of facets to it, which I think added to, and to me that flows into what I think was maybe tied with style, Chris. Like the secondary aspect to me that stood out was maybe not early on in the film, but about halfway through when they started having actual dialogues, conversations with each other, and like learning things about each other. Like some of the quips that they put in, like little funny little references, or like again they're like the barbs they throw each other, or like when they're discussing just the socio-political situation at large. I think it was very well handled. So like that went a long way to me being invested in these characters and their lives, even if like, yeah, not a lot was happening, but it was about their evolving and changing relationship and discovering, especially for David at least, discovering something about himself and his relationship to the world at large. And yeah, and then seeing Diego's like side of it where he's a little older, he's a little more like sort of worldly, like seeing the world a bit more and kind of understands how things work more here and there. So it's a bit more bittersweet on that end to see where he ended up given his feelings and relationship towards David as it went on as well. So
what I found interesting was because Beth brought after the movie, Beth brought up the fact it's just like with Diego, the trap, for lack of a better word, that Diego set for David. Beth said, if that was a woman, the perception would have been a lot different. I mean, it had that trope of a college comedy where, I say comedy because we've all reassessed those comedies, where there'd be a trap and the jock or whoever couldn't get laid. So he's like, oh, I spilled drink on your shirt, and you wave it out the window just to prove your friends that you got laid, even if you didn't. And I said, yeah, that's a really valid point. But I said, what kind of redeems Diego is the nature of the relationship change, even if it was brought in on a scam, which is interesting because David was sent in there by Miguel to be a spy for the state. And there came a point in the movie where Diego wants to get a hug from David. So they're at the end, and Diego's about to move out. He's about to go into exile in like Mexico, or I can't remember what he said. And he confesses. He's like, basically, you're right. I did try to trap you. I did wave the shirt out the window because I had a bet with German, and and it's just great. He confesses all that, expecting David to kind of reject him, and David gets up with tears in his eyes and gives him a hug, and that's where the film ends. And I just what I liked about the film is there was enough duplicity, an equal amount of duplicity on both hands, that on one hand, again, would have been, a date rape thing kind of laughed off, a potential date rape thing that would have been laughed off, and kind of an espionage thing that whatever, but neither one of them went there. While their intentions were less than, were definitely duplicitous, that's not how the relationship ended, and at the end they were, they were able to come forth. And I think it was Diego, because the rest of the relationship had their lives being various political elements, so that kind of dealt with the David part in an extent, and also his relationship with Nancy, the downstairs neighbor. But I think having Diego do the confess at the end, have David get up, I think it was a really great redemption arc for both of them, because you're right, it was kind of a coming of age thing, but this film served so many different it served so many different, had so many different things going on, that I thought the ending was probably one of the most perfect endings I've ever seen. I thought it was really, really well deserved. It wasn't schmaltzy. It wasn't just, sorry, Scott.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
No, go on.
Chris, I actually have something I want to address to you particularly. Nancy, which I like the character. She's all of my female friends, by the way. Her mental illness in this, her depression, was treated for laughs. Do you think it was, for all of the forwardness it had in LGBTQ rights and all of that, do you think it handled mental illness poorly?
Well, first of all, let's not use the word mental illness anymore. Mental health condition. I'm sorry. I'm really doing my best to change the narrative on that. But yeah, I thought they dealt with it well, because the point of the matter, and I'll tell you why. Because Diego treated it seriously, but he dealt with Nancy in the way they would communicate. Because if you'd see their dynamic would continuously be shifting. Nancy had a lot of issues, but she was trying to deny herself a lot of stuff, not really embrace herself. And the fact that, so while it was David's first time, he was a virgin and everything, to her, it was kind of, I saw it as kind of a rebirth. I mean, yeah, she definitely needs therapy, maybe medication, but Diego loved her and cared about her. David loves her and cares about her. She's able to make those connections, which is the most important thing. And even at the time where she tried to hang herself, she's once again talking to the statues. I saw it more of as an absurdist thing, in that every time she kind of recognized that it was for attention, that she's being dramatic or whatever, I thought they dealt with it well. Believe it or not, or as well as they could, given everything they were cramming into this film.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too. Like, I get you.
Because if they did treat it like a joke, I wouldn't, I would have gotten really furious this watching of it.
I kind of got that hint a little bit, although I did like the character, which is interesting that you said that. Anything else you guys want to talk about characters before I jump into another topic?
Oh, I'm trying to think of anything else to add. No, like I said, I think because the relationship was so well grounded and believable, then yeah, Chris, exactly. Like, it was a fully earned and deserved ending. Like didn't come out of nowhere. It made perfect sense for what we had seen and evolved with the characters. So I think it was a good bookend, a good cap off.
Yeah.
I want to talk about David. We've mentioned that he's coming of age. One of the things that I really liked about his growth throughout this was his perception of intimacy and love. When it starts off, he has the traditional kind of masculine stereotypes of, but even he brings up in that thing that right in the opening, that everyone's looking out for sex. So that's what he was trying to do. And to the point where he wouldn't hug Diego because of what it could be interpreted as society, and the fact that he not only brings flowers for Nancy, he brings flowers for Diego as well, and that he learns that the many different forms of love that exist in the society. And I thought that was actually very, as you mentioned earlier, the ending hug was earned, wasn't sappy, and I think that's because the growth was very natural for that character.
I absolutely agree with that. Like, yeah, that was, again, narratively wise, probably the highlight of going back to just the portrayal of it and the groundedness of it to me, I guess, to overuse that word, but I just no other way to describe it, because it was so well laid out, like put together, then you believe their tribulations, and like, again, they're changing dynamics with each other when Diego finally makes that confession, Chris, right? And you think, like, as the audience, like, well, David probably might reject him, but it makes sense that he doesn't, and like you celebrate that with him. So yeah, like, and I do think like yes, the Nancy was sort of like not comic relief per se, but she was sort of a more lighthearted character, even though she had clearly her own issues that you mentioned going on. And like Chris, you say you thought it was treated well enough, and I kind of agree. I think it was too egregious. Like yeah, I noticed that like they sort of made a joke of it, but the characters made a joke of it, not the script. If that makes sense, right? Like you said,
Right
like
on.
they were.
Yep.
That's how they interacted with each other, even though if there was whatever was going on in the background. So that didn't jar me out of it too much either. Like it was again a believable like triangle, if you will. So yeah, like I do think it all came together quite well and all unfolded itself in a organic manner.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Where the characters took her as a comic relief, but the script didn't. That is really, really important because if the script did, she had been maybe a moping goth girl. She may have been an addict of some kind. They would have thrown her under a trope, but no. It's like the thing. Part of David's redemption arc is because when his ex girlfriend comes back and offers to be his lover, he's like, no, I don't want to just be your lover. And Diego said, Nancy is a sparrow, you don't think she is. And David's looking for stability, Nancy's looking for stability. They both have one foot in each side of the pond with regard to the political situation. Diego is unable to, not only because of his sexuality, but because of his passion for art and everything, he can no longer live there. So these two are kind of like left in limbo. So like with Diego gone, having David and Nancy, because then they could be each other's grounding point, the way Diego and Nancy were.
I like
So
that.
I have one last point that I want to make, but then I'll stylistically, especially at the beginning of the film, eyes were everywhere, visualized in the background. Whether you had the saints staring at you, or there's one where they actually had a poster for, I think, the Communist Party with the eye there. But the idea of Diego having to live under that constant watch, and literally, Nancy is a confidant for the
Vigilance team or whatever. Yeah.
I thought that was a nice motif that they had throughout.
I actually didn't notice that, or like I've now that you mentioned it, yeah, but I didn't catch it at the time.
Even the stigmata in the hands of the Jesus look like an
Look
eye.
like eyes, yeah.
Watching them.
I did notice Diego had a Marilyn Monroe poster, so like your eyes are watching. Like that's as you were talking out, I did mention that. Notice that. So yeah, like for me, stylistically, like just the shots of the city and like some of like the nice like sunsets or like when they're on top of the balcony, like that's the stuff I noticed. And yeah, like it again, without being sort of like how to say this, like overblownly grandiose about it, like without being like hey flexing on it, if you will. Like it did a good job as well as in the same way the characters do of making you feel as if you're just living in this this part of the city and like the daily life, the grind, if you will, like the apartments and all that. So yeah, it did go a long way, but I do like the idea of like the eye motif, like being watched, like feeling constantly surveilled, because that's essentially what they were, and the thematically the visuals reflected that.
and one of the things I like is their use of the objective versus subjective camera, because that kind of added a little interesting texture. And I'm thinking specifically after David sees his ex and comes over and gets drunk and falls asleep on the couch. They pan from his arm, go down his chest to where his waist is. You see his belt's unbuckled, and you see Diego sitting there finishing a cigarette. And then he picks up a blanket and puts it over him. So it's just like there's a fantasy part of him. It's like, that's a line I'm not going to cross. That I looked at you while you were sleeping, but it really added a level of tension. You didn't think he was going to molest him, but by the same token, it lingered enough to provide a little uncertainty, and maybe it translated more as like the acceptance of an unrequited lust. It was well done.
Well, I said that was my okay. So let's open the floor to you guys.
No, I mean like we covered like the main things like that I thought again were standout, that were significant about this film, that were well done, well executed. And again, like it's just a little iffy to me. Like, is it amazing film? No, but it's a damn good one, and it does explore some stuff that like maybe was a little bit more progressive for the time at least, and even now a little bit at least, right? And again, from a viewpoint and a setting that, of course, like by the nature of it, like you didn't get many things from that specific one. So yeah, like I do think it's worth to check out the character work and again the writing, the script, and everything. And yeah, just something again, the nature of this tale, while not like, of course, the most unique thing ever, the setting and the spin on it, I think, does a little bit, at least to a decent degree, set it apart, and it has something interesting to say, and just a cool, good, well done foreign film that we might not have checked out otherwise, or like been trying to delve into more things, more films like it.
You good, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing.
That was your time.
In the spirit of this film, I'd like to applaud and toast everybody out there who's striking right now, and including Corey Bush, and to all the Frito-Lay workers, the Amazon. I think they're going to have a resurgence again. Definitely watch Greg at How to Drink about his billionaires and rockets episode. Yeah, but here's a toast to the workers and everybody out there as I promote my gym with this bottle here.
My final thoughts there. I think this paved the way for Moonlight to come, because I got a sense, especially the first third of Moonlight, where the young I forget the character's name, but with Mahershala Ali. Right. And that relationship, this feels like the feature-length version of that. And I thought it was the most powerful part of Moonlight to me. And I feel that this paved that way for that to come. So, again, full recommendation for me for it.
That's an interesting angle, and that may put me up. Like, I might recommend Strawberry and Chocolate now, like a little bit more. I would say like because of that. But you're right. I guess now that you mentioned it, I can see the lineage. And yeah, like I said, I give it a lot of credit anyways, but maybe just a little bit more due credit for sort of like being in that lineage, being in like the family tree, if you will, of movies like that. And yeah, it was, again, I will not say that it's not damn well done. I just wasn't sure if it was going to be that top of the line stuff. But yeah, it's interesting, unique little angle that coming from a place, like we said, that you don't often get stories from, and covering a relationship that is believable, dynamic, and well acted throughout. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to stick with our original scores, though. We gave it an 8.3 overall, which I believe average from what I've seen were like 7 to 8 on most reviews. So we're right in line with there. I'm Jonathan Ian Menzer, here with Scott Thurlow.
I'm going to escape to Cuba myself right now. See you next time.
And Chris Morgan.
Live long, prosper, and fight the power.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.
Okay.